Bienvenidos a Libélula Radio, yo soy su anfitrión Daniel Méndez Antillón. Qué gusto que estén con nosotros. Hace ya bastante tiempo que no grababa yo un programa. Para serles muy franco, no pensaba yo volver a grabar uno, pero me sentí moralmente obligado a volver a hacer estos programas porque hay muchos autores anglosajones que están produciendo material muy interesante y yo creo que es muy útil para todos nosotros que andamos en el camino del despertar espiritual y del desarrollo de la conciencia. Si bien hay muchos autores, investigadores hispanoparlantes que también lo están haciendo, creo que es importante que también nos llegue a todos nosotros el trabajo de ellos. Así que en esta nueva encarnación de Libélula Radio, escucharán ustedes que entrevisto a estos autores anglosajones. Las entrevistas van a ser en inglés, sin embargo, como verán ustedes, la entrevista va a tener subtítulos, así que ustedes van a poder ver el video y mientras escuchan la entrevista en inglés van a poder leer los subtítulos en español, a la vez que van a poder revisar algunas imágenes que tienen relación con el contenido. Así que en este primer programa voy a entrevistar al señor William Henry, que es uno de los protagonistas de la serie de televisión llamada Ancient Aliens, que acá conocemos como alienígenas ancestrales. William tiene un trabajo súper interesante, tiene más de 25 años de investigación. En esos 25 años ha estudiado mucho acerca de las civilizaciones antiguas como Egipto y Mesopotamia. Ha desarrollado material muy interesante que se puede ver en Gaiam TV, tiene una serie que se llama Arcanum. Tiene muchos libros, el más reciente de ellos se llama The Singularity is Near, que pueden conseguir ustedes gratis en su sitio de internet williamhenry.net. Y para mí de verdad que es un gran gusto y un honor que William haya aceptado que lo entreviste. La verdad es que es una persona... es un notable, es una persona importante en los Estados Unidos y bueno, pues yo, si me escucho un poco nervioso en la entrevista, por favor, no me juzguen. No se olviden de checar mi página de internet, danielmendezantillon.net. También me pueden encontrar en Twitter como Daniel Méndez 888 y en Facebook como Méndez Antillón Daniel. Gracias nuevamente por estar con nosotros. Sin más preámbulos, continuamos con la entrevista al señor William Henry. Gracias. Thank you very much, William, for being with us. I'm really pleased and honored to have you on this show. I know there will be a lot of people who will be blown, their minds will be blown with all the information that you have to share. But I would like to first begin asking you if you can just tell us a little bit about who you are and the work you have been doing for about 25 years, I think.
Yes, thank you, Daniel, and thank you for having me on the show, for interviewing me, and thank you, everybody, for listening. I'm truly grateful. As Daniel said, I've been researching this idea of extraterrestrials, angels, otherworldly beings, beginning around 1991. I was at the time writing children's books about kids and their interactions with angels and extraterrestrials, and I was documenting these stories and giving presentations about kids and the new consciousness. A lot of us are familiar with this idea that there's a kind of a new human that's coming onto the world stage, and they're going to be different. They're going to be new, improved. They're going to be psychic. They're going to have connections to otherworldly beings. And I was at that time in 1991 just deeply interested in hearing what these kids had to say about interactions with angels, and their stories were incredible. And what was amazing about it too is that it was the parents who were as excited as the kids, because they had had some of these similar experiences and interactions when they were growing up, but back in the late 50s, early 60s, it just wasn't tolerated to talk about it. The consciousness wasn't there to talk about angels and extraterrestrials and that sort of thing. And I was having a great time documenting these stories, many of them really quite mind-blowing. But then I kind of switched tracks. I started reading the works of a famous author named Zecharia Sitchin,
Sure.
who is well known as a person who documented the ancient Sumerian stories and chronicles or stories of the arrival of extraterrestrial beings in the ancient world. And Sitchin really opened my eyes to this, just how extensive the ancient interactions were with these extraterrestrials, to the point where we came to a pretty firm understanding that they had a hand in human evolution. We're talking many thousands of years ago, a group of extraterrestrials, aliens, coming to Earth, probably from different star systems, to tinker or alter human DNA. Now, Mr. Sitchin was of the opinion, and it's just an opinion, that the reason why these beings came to Earth was to mine gold. And they literally, and the stories indicate this, they created a slave race out of humankind in order to do this work for them. And I, right off the bat, had kind of trouble with this idea that they were here to mine gold. And the reason why is because at the same time that Mr. Sitchin was saying that these extraterrestrials, who are called the Anunnaki, came to Earth to mine gold, he also told us that the primary scientist, if you will, the leader of the Anunnaki, was also an alchemist, which by definition, an alchemist is a person who can take an impure metal, such as iron or another metal, and turn it into gold. But alchemists also can transform an impure soul into a pure soul. And so I got to thinking that, they could have just grabbed a hunk of space rock anywhere out there in the solar system and transmuted some impure metal into gold. Why did they need to come to Earth?
Right.
To create a slave race to mine gold for them? It just didn't make sense to me. So I started on this path of saying, well, wait a minute, what if they weren't here for gold? What if they came here on a quest or in search of souls? And what if they altered the human body, not create a race? What if instead they start altering human DNA to change the human body to make it a more conducive vehicle for the soul? And right. If so, what did they hope the human body could do for the soul? Or why do you and I incarnate on Earth? What are we doing here? What is the purpose of life? And once it's time for us to leave, how do we leave? Where do we go? And how do we get there? So these became the real focus or preoccupying questions, if you will, of my work. I do not believe they created us as a slave race to mine, in accelerating our evolution so that we can ultimately ascend from Earth. And that has become the focus of my work for the past 20 years, is investigating these ancient aliens and their ancient alien spiritual technology for assisting humans in transforming into celestial beings.
Oh, wow. And could this explanation of the extraction of gold be a metaphoric explanation of the work it is required to perfect the rainbow light body? You think?
You've asked the really critical question, Daniel. And if I may, I'll kind of back up just a little bit and tell you how I arrived at the answer to that question.
Yes, please.
In addition to starting to look at these ancient aliens from a spiritual perspective, I also diverted from the traditional view of the ancient alien theorists, as they're called, when I started investigating their spaceships. the traditional ancient alien theory says that these extraterrestrials came here in like tin can spaceships, hardware spaceships. Mm-hmm. But the problem with that is that you do have incredible depictions of gods flying around in winged discs. But more often than that, you see depictions of the coming and going from the stars through portals or gateways. And they're two very different things. If you're a hardware spaceship, then you're probably not looking for the portal. And if you're not seeking the portal, what you're not going to realize is that the only way we can access that portal or travel through the portal is to transform our body. Our flesh and blood body is not capable of going through these portals or gateways, according to the ancient myths and legends of the extraterrestrials that came here. Because what these stories tell us about the gateway always have with them are instructions for transforming our flesh and blood bodies into light before we go through those portals. So I started on this path of looking for those teachings, and I found all kinds of evidence, visual evidence in ancient sacred art, especially in Egypt, that the ancient gods didn't travel the stars in spaceships. They traveled through portals or wormholes. And I pioneered, or was the originator of the perspective that the ancient Egyptian gods, when they are portrayed on the temple walls on their ships of eternity, that these ships of eternity look exactly like the way modern science portrays a wormhole. Mm-hmm. So I started this idea that ancient Egyptian gods were in fact stargate or wormhole travelers. Then what happened was, this is now 2006, I was at a UFO conference in Northern California, and I was giving my presentation, which was called Star Walkers in the Dimension of the Blessed. And it was about these ancient alien beings, the gods of ancient Egypt, who came to ancient Egypt, taught them how to transform into light and sail the stars on their wormhole-shaped ships of eternity, or arcs of the millions of years, as they called them. So after my presentation, this really lovely couple comes up to me and introduces themselves. They're in their mid-50s or so. They tell me they both have PhDs from the Harvard Divinity School. They work for the Dalai Lama. They translate Tibetan texts. They lived in India as well. And their specialty is the rainbow body of light. And they asked me if I had ever heard of it. And I told them, no, I never heard of the rainbow body of light. And they gave me a brief explanation. They said that the Tibetans believe or teach that the human body was designed to have its frequency accelerated until it can be spun into a vortex of energy that ultimately manifests as 5-colored rainbow light, leaving behind only hair, toe, and fingernails, which have no nerves to be transmuted. Yeah. And that was mind-blowing to me. I mean, just think about this, that in light of what I just said a moment ago about ancient extraterrestrials coming here to alter the human body, were they the ones responsible for this alteration or teaching us how to spin our body into a next level being? This is sort of like the caterpillar morphing into the butterfly. And like the famous cartoon I saw once says, it shows a depiction of two caterpillars looking up at a butterfly and saying to one another, "You'll never get me up in one of those things." Yeah. It's almost a too far out belief for people to understand that our body is in the process of transforming and is capable of this massive transformation from our flesh and blood body into what is called the rainbow body of light. And just to finish the story, the couple then told me that what's amazing is that my work in ancient Egypt, looking at the starboat riders, the Ark of the Millions of Years starboat riders, answered for them a question about the rainbow body that the Tibetans wouldn't answer because they didn't know the answer, or because the answer was secret. And that is this. They say, the Tibetans say, that this rainbow body teaching did not come from Earth. And furthermore, it is taught in 13 star systems, including our own. And that once these beings have, or once we actually have attained the rainbow body of light, we can then travel to these other 12 star systems that Earth and Sol, our star system, is somehow connected to. And what they always wanted to know is once we attain the rainbow body and can travel to these star systems, how do we get there? And then they said they're watching my presentation, Star Walkers in the Dimension of the Blessed, and they got their answer. That once we have attained the rainbow body, we can then open wormholes and travel the cosmos. And that's then set me off on a whole new path of research, which brings us to our conversation today.
Yes, and you know, one of the things, one of the reasons why I became so interested in the concept of the rainbow light body is because, as you know, there are so many different spiritual offers right now. There are so many different interpretations of what the path of illumination or whatever you want to call it should be. And I guess as a seeker of the truth, which you and I are, as the people who are listening to this audio, is that you can get very confused about which path to follow. And I guess one of the first questions people would ask, listening to what you're saying now, is, well, what proof do we have, or how do we know that what you're saying is actually truth? Are there any testimonies or any cases documented that you can talk about just to verify that this rainbow light body is something real?
Yes, absolutely. It's a wonderful question. Well, for one, what I've done in my work, and it's unique to me, is to link the rainbow body not just from the Tibetan tradition, but into other traditions. In the Tibetan tradition, they refer to the attainment of the rainbow body as the great perfection. And they refer to our transformation into light as perfecting our body, or the great perfection. So for me, that word perfect, which means whole, holy, and complete, is sort of like a needle that I use to thread my way through various spiritual traditions. When you go into, for example, the Christian tradition, you learn all about the great perfection in the story of the resurrection of Jesus, who is portrayed as a light being in his resurrection, sitting on a rainbow or enfolded within rainbow light. This is because I believe he has attained this great sense of this great perfection, or this holy or whole or complete state. Now that happened 2,000 years ago. Then you get into the 8th century in Tibet, and we start getting more recollection, more actual evidence of the rainbow body of light in terms of the great master teacher Padmasambhava.
Yep.
And then we come into modern times, and beginning in the 1950s, when the Chinese began suppressing the Tibetans, we started hearing more and more reports of Tibetans attaining the rainbow body. And in fact, in Chinese sources as well as Tibetan sources, they tell us that as nearly 200,000 people have attained the rainbow light body in modern times. Now, we don't have video yet of an actual rainbow body dematerialization, but we do have what some people claim to be as evidence of the rainbow body manifestation on video. So I believe that what's happening here is we're starting to see an acceleration of this teaching. And by the way, the Dalai Lama has said that this teaching will see its fulfillment in the West, which means North America, the entire North American continent, including the South American continent as well, will be the place where we see this manifestation. So I'm starting to seek out evidence in both the South American world as well as the North American world of the rainbow body. And what I'm seeing is a dramatic acceleration in interest in this subject, which is telling me that I think we're on the verge of a mass awakening to this level of consciousness. Yeah. So for people who are confused, there is historical basis for this in all the world's spiritual traditions. It's not just the Tibetan, it's the Egyptian, it's the Christian, it's of course the Buddhist tradition. Virtually all the world's sacred traditions have a name for the next level of human manifestation. Call it the rainbow body of light, the light body, the diamond body, the resurrection body, the glory body, the supramental body. There are numerous names for this level of manifestation, and what we're starting to see is that, in fact, it's at the core of all the world's spiritual traditions.
Yeah. Yeah, and even though I'm not, I don't do a lot of research, but a few weeks ago, my wife and I went to Palenque, Chiapas, which is a very interesting place because the Mayans there were very aware of the secrets of time and space, and I haven't found really any evidence just confirming that they knew about the rainbow light body, but one of the pointers there is that, as you all were aware, one of the great mysteries about the Mayans is that from one day to the other, they just left. Of course, there are a lot of Mayan descendants in the south of Mexico, but the evidence points that there was this one particular day when somehow a lot of Mayans decided that it was time to go, and they left. They left basically the ovens, burning. And nobody explains how they were able to accomplish that feat. I mean, to leave the place from one day to the other. One explanation could be is that they were already working on using their own bodies or vortexes or something like that.
I've heard that, Daniel, and I'm so incredibly interested in it. This idea of a mass ascension of people, the Essenes. Were working on a similar thing. These, of course, are the Jewish mystics at the time of Jesus. Jesus, John the Baptist are considered to be Essenes. But let me just put this on the table as regards Palenque. In the Jewish mystical tradition, the angels, who we can argue are extraterrestrials, who brought this mystical teaching of human transformation into a celestial being, which is what we're talking about with the rainbow body. These beings, these angels, were called seraphim.
Yeah.
They're described as having humanoid, rainbow-like bodies that are plasma-like as well. And that to me is a tip-off that we're talking about rainbow body beings. These angels, these seraphim, are rainbow body beings, just based on these eyewitness encounters of people like Isaiah and Ezekiel and others in the Old Testament that encountered these angelic beings. These seraphim, their name, seraphim, means winged serpents or feathered serpents.
Okay.
That is exactly the same as the definition of the name Quetzalcoatl, Gucamats, Kukulkan. They are the winged or feathered serpent. And that raises the question to me, was the winged or feathered serpent present in the Yucatan? And if so, were they part of this same link of angels that were offering this rainbow body or ascension teaching, both in Palestine in the ancient times and possibly even in the Yucatan?
Wow, that is incredible because actually I don't know if you have been in Palenque, but there are many references to the winged serpent.
Yes,
it seems, yeah. And I took some photographs that I can certainly send to you or post in my website when we post this interview. But also, another thing is that one of the guides who has been working there for about 45 years, he was there present when Alberto Ruz did the excavations and all that. He says that from his work there so many years, he has found out that apparently Pakal was an Egyptian pharaoh. He was not originally Mayan. So, I mean, there's nothing to confirm that, but it's interesting.
It's very interesting. And Lord Pakal, of course, is portrayed on that famous slab from the Temple of Inscriptions at Palenque. And you have some that say that it resembles a rocket ship, right? But actually, it's not a rocket ship. This is his throne that he uses to descend into the underworld. It's like the more like a tree of life. The thing about it is that his throne is exactly the same as the throne of the Egyptian god Osiris, and it's the same as the throne of Buddha, and it's the same as the throne of Christ. And what all of these symbols that you see on these thrones, which are identical, what they all ultimately represent is a sort of ascension kit of tools that we can all assemble within our own selves and enable our own descent into the underworld. So I'm making the case that in those inscriptions and depictions, we are seeing evidence of this rainbow body teaching because the symbols are there.
That is incredible. Now let me to put the whole puzzle together. So if we humans are destined to develop our own rainbow light body, why don't we know this? Why are we so far away to do the mass ascension? What is happening in the world right now?
Well, lots of answers to that. The primary reason I would say is control. Mm-hmm. And this control could be coming from a malevolent source that's trying to keep us sort of enslaved in a lower dimensional vibration. Or it could possibly even be a benevolent force that is saying, hey, we can't give this teaching to everybody because there'd be potential for them to misuse it. So what happens is with these mystery schools is that individuals take it upon themselves to embark on this path. And going all the way back to Gilgamesh in ancient Samaria, 2300 BC, he talked about how narrow the gate is and that few actually find it. Jesus said the exact same thing 2300 years later, that this is that attainment of the light body really is a narrow path, that 9.9 out of 10 people have probably never even heard of it. And they're therefore not on this path just yet. But perhaps this 0.1% of the people that do have awareness of it will be able to kind of show them the way. I mean, the other thing is that you have had, going back to, again, the time of Jesus, there was a huge movement to bring this teaching forward. And his life, I believe, was a demonstration of the attainment of the light body. And you see what happened to Jesus and his followers. Anybody who knew about this was stamped out by Rome. They were all murdered. They hunted and murdered to prevent this teaching from gaining popularity. The Cathars in southern France in the 13th century said, we got it. We have this teaching. What happened? Rome came in and exterminated as many as 1 million men, women, and children Cathars to keep this teaching from gaining wider knowledge. So there's competitive forces here, but ultimately, for me, it's the path to follow because it's the way we can be of greatest service to one another. What I mean by that is that the reason we want to attain the light body in this next level of manifestation isn't for personal ego reasons. It's rather that this is how we serve our Creator. It's how we transform our world, because people who are on this path of attaining wholeness are really more spiritual people than your ordinary person. They value their body, they value the gift of life, and they value our home planet, and they seek to infuse it with greater light and love in hopes that everyone will be able to awaken onto this path.
Yeah. You know, I personally think that everything in the universe tends to evolution. It's like something embedded in the DNA of everything. You know, everything seems to evolve. Even a tumor seems to evolve. Everything wants to become bigger and better. So it only seems natural to me that the rainbow light body is the next step in our own evolution, but it has somehow been also hijacked probably by what the Gnostic materials in Nag Hammadi calls the archons, or whatever this force, this extraterrestrial force is, that it's trying to prevent us from reaching that state. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, imagine, let's go back to our caterpillar butterfly scenario. You've lived your life as a caterpillar, and some guy comes along and says, hey, friend, you're actually this beautiful, magnificent butterfly over here. And you just kind of go, what? Show me, right? That's our fundamental prediction. We don't believe we can attain the rainbow body, therefore we don't do the actions that are required in order to put us on this path, which is primarily based on love. And therefore we don't have imagination feeding us that this is where we can go. And this is what I'm trying to do in my work, is to help people to imagine this next level of life. What will my life be like? What will I be doing differently once I've attained the rainbow body that I'm not doing now? Mm-hmm. And how can I connect with that aspect of myself? Now that we have the destination, we can start working on the map. And this is, again, what I hope to achieve with people in my books and in my presentations. Our conversation today is to try to get people to kind of begin to visualize themselves as their next level of evolution. And here's one way I would recommend thinking about this. What we're going for here is we want to become more whole than we presently are. We want to be more holy. Because if I'm more whole and holy, then I have all kinds of great abilities at my fingertips. I can reach out my hand and I can touch and heal somebody. I can have access to a tremendous wealth of cosmic knowledge. I can even time travel. I can levitate. I can manipulate matter. These are all of the capabilities of the next level of human. And attaining those abilities ultimately brings us a greater sense of wholeness, or as I say, holiness. Now, here's the thing, Daniel. Wholeness is symbolized by a circle. And a circle is, of course, 360 degrees. So what I encourage people to do is to look at their life mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, and think, okay, here's where I'm at right now. Pick a number. I am presently, today, living my life mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally at, say, 2/3 fulfilled, 2/3 whole. I'm about 240 on that scale. And I am reading certain books, listening to certain things, eating certain foods, doing certain things physically, and feeling certain things emotionally that are reflective of my life at 240 out of 360. My thing is what I encourage people to do is to think, well, wait a minute. When I'm at, say, 270 on that scale, I probably won't be doing the same things I'm doing now. I will be doing different things mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And I encourage people to try to begin to imagine what will you be doing differently once you have, quote unquote, ascended or are stepping into these higher vibrational aspects of yourself. And then start doing those things. And this is how we begin to raise our, quote unquote, vibration and begin to embody our more whole or holy self.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like reverse engineering somehow?
It is like reverse engineering, but it comes from this sense of ultimately realizing that I'm like the caterpillar. I'm in a pupal phase here in this human body. I'm 50. I'll be 53 in October. 53 years ago and 6 months ago, I was a sperm and an egg. Several months after that, I was a little tiny ball of life. And then I began to evolve into this human form. And I went through this phase where I looked like a serpent, then I looked like a dolphin, then I looked like other creatures. And then I started taking on my human form. And I came out of the womb and I've grown. And once I put off this clothing that I'm presently wearing that I call my human body, the question is, what clothing am I going to put on next? Well, the next clothing is called the rainbow body of light.
Right.
Great. Well, how do I go about acquiring that garment of light?
Okay. So for someone who wants to begin that quest, where would you point that person? What materials or what book or source of information would you recommend to someone who wants to actually work on this?
Well, I have several offerings actually on my website, which is williamhenry.net.
Cool.
I have DVD presentations that are available in my store. My most popular one is called Morph, The Secret of Light Body Activation. And this is a very good fundamental beginning place that takes you into this concept and also gives you action steps, things that you can do that will help you to start manifesting your more whole or holy self. And beyond that, the next level of training is offered I have online presentations called the Scion Academy that goes into it in more detail as well.
Yeah. In your latest book called The Singularity is Near, you talk about these hazards or these dangers of exactly these entities that are trying to prevent us from attaining the body of light.
Yes, and that The Singularity is Near is a free book that anybody can just send me an email through my website and I'll send it right over to you. And the idea behind the book is this. Going back to the very beginning of our interactions with these ancient aliens and extraterrestrials, they clearly told us that we have the ability to attain superhuman capabilities. The symbol for the attainment of these capabilities has, for thousands of years, been the attainment of a robe or a garment of light. And what I started noticing back in 2003 was that the technology companies, call them the technocrati or the digerati, are actively involved right now in the creation of a new layer of human skin that will have super advanced artificial intelligent technology enmeshed in our flesh. This is exactly the same thing. It's equal to what the ancients were talking about with the attainment of this garment of light that made us immortal and gave us superhuman capabilities. Thing is that the digerati, and these are all the major companies in Silicon Valley, you name it, Google, Apple, Microsoft, Samsung, they are all right now aiming their technology at human skin, at meshing their flesh with our flesh and giving us these superhuman capabilities. The problem is that if we allow this to happen, experts fear we will no longer have free will. And these corporations will have complete and utterly total control of our human body and the future of humanity.
Yeah, which is actually extremely easy to do right now. I mean, they can, right now they have the technology to even insert thoughts into your mind.
Yes, they do. From remote locations, they have the capability of editing your thoughts. And this is something that they've actively have been promoting for a long time, but it really began accelerating in the early 2000s when the United States government started promoting the convergence of these technologies on the skin, and also with it the idea of the hive mind. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the kind of the New Age precepts is that we're all one, and we really don't think that one through, I don't think. But from the technologist point of view, they want all of our brains linked up to one giant central brain. And what their promise is going to be, and this is something Google is working on, they call it the synthetic neocortex. They are literally creating a new layer for our brain. And kind of their temptation here is what they're going to say to us is that you have the power of one brain. How would you like the power of 7 billion brains? Mm-hmm. And if you say yes, then you're welcome into their kind of cult. If not, they're going to try to convince you that you are no longer going to be able to be competitive in the workplace. You will no longer be accepted by society, because everyone in the near-term future, between now and 2020, just the next 5 years, according to Google, will become a hybrid being. And the thing is that this may not be by choice. The way things are going, this could be a mandatory transformation of who we are.
Right, which very well could put us on the path to make real what the movies The Matrix are trying to convey, right? That with a technology like that, they can certainly control our thoughts, just have a means maybe to extract our emotions. Because the Gnostic materials talk about the archons as entities that are like mental parasites, that they feed off our emotions and thoughts, right? And that technology could certainly enable them to have an easier way to concentrate all that energy.
That's exactly right. They are interested in harvesting some kind of an energy from the human body. And perhaps this technology will enable them to greater amounts of this substance. But there is an alternative. There is a way out. And for me, the pathway out came through Don Juan, as documented by Carlos Castaneda in his books.
Yeah.
Don Juan taught that there's an alien predator that thinks of and treats humans as property. And he believed that they used humans as a food source and can, of course, control our mind and are intent on keeping us dumbed down and unaware of their influence. And what they feed on, according to Don Juan, he calls it our shining coat of awareness. We're all born with this shining coat, which I believe is the same as the rainbow body. But through anger, anxiety, jealousy, competitiveness, the dog-eat-dog world, we minimize that in ourselves. And this opens us up to the influence then of these predators, these archons, or whatever term you want to use for the predator. And what Don Juan said is that we all have it within our capability to ward them off, to protect ourselves. And the way that we do this is by keeping our thoughts and our energy focused on love rather than fear, jealousy, anger, and strife, and those lower energies that they feed off of. And what he taught was, what Don Juan taught is that our spiritual discipline, this focus on love, makes our glowing or shining coat grow. And our energy then unpalatable to the predator. They can't stand this kind of energy. They don't want to feed off this food source. It's no good to them. So by lifting our rainbow body once again, we are able then to keep that predator at bay and ultimately transform ourselves as well as our planet. And the thing is what I'm taught, and I take this to heart, is he says that you don't have to go full rainbow body. Once you grow your rainbow body to the level of the toes, once it goes to the level of the toes, it grows back to its natural size.
Going back to the concept of the singularity, I guess we can see already many examples of how these devices are being created. For example, the Google Glasses. Do you think that's one of the first steps towards creating all this type of implements to manipulate our minds?
Yeah, going back to 2003 when the U.S. government really started promoting this idea that our advanced technology, and I'm talking talking genetic technology, well, I'm talking computer technology or bits, talking atoms or nanotechnology, neuroscience or brain technology, and genetic technology. So bits, atoms, neurons, and genes. These are the four technologies, bang, coming one. And what they said was that this aimed at the human body, and that ultimately would converge into one technology. Then they, on top of that, the idea of the hive mind, where we would all become one mind. The U.S. government recognizes we're not going to make a leap from where we are right now directly to putting this technology in our skin. We would go through an intermediate phase. And during that intermediate phase, the technology companies would start producing this technology that we wear. Google Glass, as you noted, is one example of that. A computer that you wear like a pair of glasses. It was a huge failure for Google. One, because people who wore Google Glass looked like dorks or geeks. People didn't like it from a fashion sense.
Yeah.
But two, people turned their back on it because someone wearing glass could record everything and everyone they come into contact with and put it up on the internet. So they've gone back to the drawing board, and now Google is going to get rid of glass, and they're going right to the implantable contact lens. That's what they're working on right now. Another example is the Apple Watch. This is Apple's first step towards technology aimed at the human body. You're going to be wearing your Apple Watch for a couple of years. But where they know this is going is not that you're going to be wearing your watch. It's going to be put in your skin 2020. Same thing with the iPhone. Same thing with all of this technology. We're going to get it out of our hand and put it into our hand. All 10 orifices of our body, all 10 openings of our body are presently fair game for development of computer technology, and all the major companies are looking for ways to get inside your skin, in your body.
Well, William, thank you so much for all this. I don't want to take too much of your time, but if you don't mind, I would like to ask you about the upcoming events that you have, because they all seem pretty cool, and I would like to start with this event that you're going to have in Nashville in October. It's called Theurgy. My first question there would be, what is Theurgy? What does that concept entail?
Theurgy is a Greek word. It means doing the divine work. It's the opposite of the word theology. A theologian talks about God. It's God talk. Theurgy means to do the work of becoming God-like.
Right.
It's all about our transformation into our angel self, the rainbow body. This is what the Theurgists did. This is the divine work that they did. It was the work of transformation. So in Nashville, where I live, October 17th and 18th, I'll be joined by Dr. Eben Alexander. He's the famous neurosurgeon that wrote about his near-death experience.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about how we ascend, how we connect with the rainbow light body and open portals and gateways into the next realm, which some call the afterlife.
And then like 10 days later, you have a trip to Egypt, and I think I saw in Facebook that you still have a couple of spots left.
Yes, we do. We have a couple spaces left for our legendary Stargate Egypt tour, which will be October 27th through November 9th. Excuse me. I've done over a dozen Egypt tours, and I absolutely love going back and exploring the temples and introducing people to the incredible mysteries of ancient Egypt. It's so fulfilling, and I would invite anybody that has in going to Egypt to join us in October and early November. It's an opportunity to experience in a really incredible way.
Great. All this information can be found on your website, williamhenry.net. But you just announced a new event that it seems really interesting also. for April of 2016, you're doing a trip to Turkey. Why Turkey?
Yes, we are. My wife Claire and I are leading a tour to the portals and gateways of sacred Turkey on April 13th through the 27th. That tour is just now booking, and we'll look forward to having people join us there. And we're hoping to get to the Yucatan in 2016 as well. So maybe we'll have that to talk about next time.
Well, thank you very much, William. You've been very generous with your time.
Well, thank you, Daniel. It's been my pleasure. I'm very grateful.
Bien, con eso concluimos nuestra entrevista a William Henry. Muchas gracias a William, la verdad ha sido un placer entrevistarlo y un honor. Si quieren saber más acerca de William, pueden buscarlo en su sitio williamhenry.net, donde van a encontrar mucha información muy interesante. Y yo espero que nos acompañen en el siguiente programa de Libélula Radio. En la siguiente emisión vamos a tener al autor Richard Casaro. De verdad que si les gustó este programa, el siguiente les va a encantar. Para más información acerca de un servidor, pueden consultar mi página danielmendezantillon.com o pueden ir directamente a libélularadio.com. Muchas gracias, que estén muy bien y nos vemos en la siguiente emisión.